Hello and welcome to the Digital Freethought Radio Hour on WOZO Radio 103.9 LPFM right here in Knoxville, Tennessee. We're recording this on Sunday morning, January 9th, 2022. I am Larry Rhodes, or Doubter 5, and as usual, we have our co-host, Wombat, on the line with us. Hello, Wombat.
Hello.
And our guests today are John Richards from across the pond in England. Hello and welcome. And George Brown, the 2.5s from Tennessee. Welcome, welcome. Digital Freethought Radio Hour is a talk radio show about atheism, free thought, rational thought, humanism, and the sciences. And conversely, we'll also talk about religion, religious faiths, gods, holy books, and superstitions. And if you get the feeling that you're the only non-believer in town, well, you're just not. In Knoxville, a small southern town in Bible Belt, we have over 1,000 of us. And we'll tell you more about the ASK, or Atheist Society of Knoxville, after the mid-show break.
Great name.
Right now, Wombat, what are we going to be talking about today?
You just didn't believe hard enough. That's the topic of today's show. I think it's going to be a fun one.
Blaming the victim.
Blaming the victim or lack of falsifiability and a claim. So many little persnickety problems that I love to talk about. We got the best crew to talk about it today. Before we get into the meat and potatoes, let's have a quick little review. Have you been over the last week? I know some of us had more extreme stories than the other, but before George beats everyone's story, how about this? I'll just throw out mine quick. I beat a guy who was very good at disc golf yesterday, and I felt very good about that. I put a little feather in my hat, but I didn't make it a big deal. I was just like, hey, we're out here having fun. When I got home, I was like, I got him. John Richards, how you been?
Well, I've been the best I've been for a week.
What?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Wow. So no sickness? You didn't contract some new ammonia or some new strain of like monkey flu or something like that? What's going on?
No. I've finally tunneled my way out from the mountain of phlegm.
Okay.
If that's a picture you want, that that COVID inspires, and I feel pretty good. Yeah.
Have your family finally let you out of the attic? Are you no longer the old sick guy that lives in the loft? Like, well, we have someone who can come down now. It's great.
Yeah. Our upstairs is a loft conversion, so there's no attic.
Okay. Fantastic. I'm so glad to see you have a bill of good health, and I hope you keep it up. It's more fun times are coming for sure. Larry, how you been over since last week?
Oh, fine. I've been playing a lot of virtual games, Half-Life, Alex, more than anything else.
You look rattled. Has it been scary? You look rattled. Has it been scary? Have you been? How many jump scares have you had?
There's a guy in there named Jeff that you got to deal with. He's a monster, literally. You can't kill him, so you got to evade him. Anyway,
how long can you do VR? Just wondering, how long can you do a VR session?
Well, on a single charge, you can go anywhere between 1 and 2 hours. And after about an hour, I'm kind of wrung. It's a little intense. The other thing I wanted to mention was during this week, I've been reliving the events of January 6th from last year on TV and stuff. And I think we need to keep that in our minds as much as we keep 9/11 or anything else. Pearl Harbor, it was a direct threat to our democracy. It may not have been an external threat, but it was still a threat. It was still possible to have lost it at that time.
Absolutely.
So keep that in mind.
All right. So never forget. There are a lot of days in January they're starting to toll up, but definitely. Don't. I remember when that happened. I told everyone in my crew, "Hey, don't come. Go home, and don't come to work. We don't know if there's going to be a state of emergency." And it wasn't just the Capitol building. I just want to make that a point. It was almost every state level Capitol building that was also under attack as well.
But it was one particular political party. And you need to keep that in mind too.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Hey, there's no secrets here. Like, we all know how bad of a president Trump was, and that shouldn't go under any, ambiguous claims. That was an objectively horrendous 4 years.
Right.
George Brown, 2.5. So you had a pretty boring week, right?
Well, I spent the boring week in the hospital. I spent New Year's in the hospital waiting for the insurance company to come to work so they could approve a procedure. And they we're happy having a good time on New Year's Eve and didn't do anything. So I spent another 2 or 3 days in the hospital, and then they came back and said, "You're doing so well, we're not going to pay for anything."
Oh man! So would you mind giving me a flashback if you feel comfortable sharing it? Why were you in the hospital?
Were you having
Well,
a baby or something?
He was just so handsome. That was the problem.
No,
It just said,
I had a stroke.
Yep.
Is what happened. So it's a major issue, and I feel like I'm coming along, and I hope I am. I want to regain the use of my fingers on my left hand, which I used to have, and this because I'm a good typist and I'm a musician by training, so my fingers are important to me,
Right.
and I've been feeling like my left hand is a club. It's about as useful as a club, and so it's. I feel like I'm coming along. It's like the insurance company. I can't disagree with them. It's like they said, well, the guy's doing so well. Why should we pay for a nursing home? Yeah, right.
Wow.
It's true.
Wow,
It's true. So I'll be getting help. Physical therapy and occupational therapy starting tomorrow, and I'm really looking forward to it. I'm very eager.
It's another chapter of the romance between George and his physical therapist visiting his door. So
Well,
I'm
that's
really
true.
happy for you.
Yeah, I really like the occupational therapists a lot.
Good.
And part of that's because they're women. I have I'm not. I have not learned yet that women are not magic, and
Okay.
it's like I all my life I've just thought that females are magical, which is not true, but it's what I believe.
It could be true, George, if you believed hard enough.
Hard enough.
Hard enough.
which gets us nicely to the topic at hand. So I do want to talk about it. George, John Richards is pointing down. I imagine he's telling everyone to check their pause screen or check bars or something.
I'm pointing at you, the segue master.
Thank you. I appreciate it. So guys, I wanted to talk about when you're told or you're having a conversation with someone who is a deep believer, maybe a theist, and you're having a conversation about the matters of faith and how we could test that to come up with a reliable way to know if their belief is reasonable or not reasonable, rational or not rational, or at least have some sort of test where it can give you like an indication if they're on the right track or not. Because a lot of people can claim, I believe in this God, and let that be all the proof that they have, just the confidence in the claim itself. But when it comes to testing it, or a good methodical way to test it, that's when we can parse true things from false things. And what I found on a number of instances is that I've been approached by people who, when I ask them, how can we test this? And they give me a test, and I say, okay, so if the test happened, and it happened exactly as you said it would, that will prove that your God exists. But what happens if it doesn't happen the way that you explained to me? It's like, well, then I just didn't believe hard enough. And I hear that, and it makes my heart turn upside down and makes my stomach do a little backwards flip. Because in my head, that's an argument that regardless of whatever the outcome, they're still holding the same conclusion. And in science, that's a bad test. Maybe we could have a roundtable discussion on that. John Richards, do you agree with me that that's a bad way to set up the test?
Absolutely. And what puzzles me is, how do you vary the strength of your belief? I mean, is there, what is it? Is there a volume knob? Or maybe it's like, how?
Yeah, how could I believe any more right now that my shirt's blue, right? It's like, I'm looking at it already, but could I believe in more than it? How do I do that? It puts some really interesting concepts on, is belief a choice? And if it is a choice, is it a variable choice?
Yes.
That can increase like a gas pedal.
Yes.
Larry, what do you think? Is belief? Oh, go on, George. What's up?
Yeah, on John's test meter, it goes up to 11.
It goes up to well done. Larry, belief a choice? Can we verify? Oh my gosh.
No. I mean, it's a simple test. Can you choose to believe in Santa Claus is real? I mean, can you choose to believe something like that? It's the same with like homosexuality. Can you just choose which sexual orientation you are? Like, let's say you're heterosexual. Could you just choose to start liking men like you do women. It's not a choice, and neither is belief. You are convinced certain things are true. Those are your beliefs. You can become non-convinced. You can be unconvinced with proper evidence, and then those new beliefs would be what your beliefs are. But you can't just switch them on and off like a light.
So I think you're coming to an interesting point. I want to just highlight it. You're saying belief is a product of whether or not you're convinced or not, but you have no control of whether or not you believe something, just whether you can be convinced of it or not, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
John Richards, what's up?
Well, I have an interesting different take on this from Larry, because I think that you can't choose your first belief, because that is inducted into you at the same time as you learn language. So as you learn your language, whatever language that might be, people are speaking about their God, and you're picking it up as part of the culture that you're in.
I would find these two ideas wholly compatible. Like, he's saying you can't choose your beliefs, and you're saying you can't choose your first belief. I'd say you can't choose any of them.
Well,
talk to me.
I think you can choose your second belief, you see.
Okay. You can choose which language to take when you get to high school. You'd be like, I want to learn Spanish.
Well,
but that's not a belief.
I believe I want to learn Spanish.
If you can't choose your second belief, then how did Cassius Clay, Baptist, become Muhammad Ali, Muslim?
He was convinced.
Yeah, he was convinced.
He was convinced by people who were religious that he needed to change his beliefs. So he studied it and became convinced that Islam was true, and he changed his beliefs.
So there you
go. He changed his convictions, which were reflected in his beliefs.
So at that stage, it's a choice.
He was convinced. I mean, can you choose what you're convinced of and what you're not convinced of?
Well, I wouldn't want to argue with Muhammad Ali, to be honest, so.
You punch your lights out.
Yes, exactly.
You can't argue with him because he's not alive anymore.
Oh, yes. That is a handicap. I agree.
I wanna poke this salient topic real quick, and then we'll go straight to George. You're saying basically that because Muhammad Ali switched religions, that's a demonstration of choice of belief, that he chose. But I feel like there's a conflation on the word belief, in terms of he moved from one religious system to the next because he could have easily seen that other religious doctrine and not been convinced that it was rational any more than Christianity, and rejected it. Like, I think in the most basal level, there was a conviction on his part to get away from what the culture of America was, particularly how it treated Black people, and he saw a better way of treatment by I
think that had more to do with it than the supernatural beliefs. I do.
Yeah, and that was the hook that got him into, okay, and what else is in here? Fine, this is what I'll follow, because this is a lot better than the system I was in before. Like, literally, my country's villainizing me for not going to war. Now, what do you guys got? I'm convinced with whatever you guys have. I think there's a lot more. It's a much more complex thing. But I think he was convinced of it.
A lot of it could be lip service too, just saying that he believed things that he didn't in order to become part of that culture.
It's also not the first time that a major religion will pick up a very big celebrity and tout that celebrity as, and look, we have Tom Cruise. That makes us normal because you like Tom Cruise, right? Oh, we have this guy. We have this guy. We have Muhammad Ali, who was a better boxer. Who's a bigger, more famous athlete than this guy, right? We even changed his name. That's how popular he is. I'm sorry. George, what do you think?
Well, Larry mentioned something about a person's first belief system being something that was imposed on them from the outside at the beginning. And I want to say that I did not have that. And John grew up in a different culture than I did. It's like the UK has an official religion. And New York City, where I grew up, does not. And that's something that is distinctive about the history of New York City, going way back to the Dutch. It was a commercial colony to begin with. It was all about money. And I think because there were so many strong religions around New York City, no one of them took precedence over another. it was like a test bed for our belief that church and state should be separate in a sense. So I not only grew up without a concept of God in the house whatsoever.
Wow.
But it was also not imposed upon me in any way externally.
Yeah.
If anything,
Even
that's a great
not even when I
demonstration.
went to school. John, yeah, what do you have? I really want to hear what you have to say about that.
Well, you've raised a number of interesting things there. For a start, you raise money. Now, that's something else that we have to have, isn't it? It's fiat currencies, the ones which are not based on gold or another precious actual item. Fiat currencies, the ones that governments decree should be having a value.
Yeah,
they have to be believed in, and if that belief fails, then you end up with 1929 America or 1922 Germany. I might have got the date wrong there. Where everybody was carrying wheelbarrows of drachmas. No, not drachmas.
Yes.
Greek.
Yeah, the wrong currency. But a currency
definitely it would have been useless, just as useless, right?
Yes. Yes. But a currency is definitely something that you have to believe in, and you can choose pretty much whether or not to believe in it, because sometimes whole populations choose not to believe in it.
Yeah, in a more modern context, we have this new thing called cryptocurrencies, and there are a lot of different kinds of cryptocurrencies that all essentially represent a monetary dollar value.
Yes.
And if you have money and you want to invest in cryptocurrencies, you have a wealth of options. Some are good investments, some aren't, but they're all based on the confidence of a particular system because they have no inherent value on their own. They're only what people are willing to pay to get more of those coins.
Well, let me get back to John. The question I asked John, I was going to ask John, is you've lived in a country that has an official religion, which we don't have in the United States. How do you see that as coloring the upbringing of an atheist, let's say?
Well, again, that's another very interesting aspect that you raised there, because, of course, although we have an official religion, where theoretically we own the Anglican religion, it's established as part of our state, that doesn't work in practice. It's the opposite of the US of A, where you have a secular constitution, but Christianity is rampant, particularly Baptist Christianity. So
tell me about it. Well, I'm surrounded here.
So the thing to do, if you want to see a dwindling of religion, is to establish it, to make it part of your state, so that then it feels privileged and doesn't have to missionarize your population, and gradually it dwindles away. People lose interest in it, and the churches have to be sold off.
I want to underscore what you just said, because if I look at Italy and France and one other country, Ireland, they're all Catholic, and
Ireland would have some contention with that, but okay.
The way I see that is that the Catholic Church has been so established and so extreme in its inflexibility that it has given the populace a very rigid springboard against which to rebel, and that they have done it, and they've done it very successfully.
Look at France and the rebellion there.
Yes.
So I will throw out something here. I think it's not so much, and John Richards, I get the joke. It's not so much let church have a official state and then let them get lazy and then enjoy the
there's some contradictions there.
There's a really good history in the American culture where we weren't as religious as we are now. It's been a progressive thing, and we've been letting it happen, and we need to get to the idea of reminding ourselves what we intended to make this country be when we originally started it, and getting back at least in principles to that, where we truly did have a separation of church and state and didn't have nearly as much influence as they do now. We had, like, for example, what was it? The Pledge of Allegiance that didn't have any mentions of gods. Then 1950s during McCarthyism, we've instituted it in, and all of a sudden you had to be super American, which meant you had to be super Christians, and Christians funded that idea. And next thing you know, we're warping the idea of what Americana is in this country.
Also, they're using the government to take money away from our education system and fund the religious schools. The voucher programs and all that it's a what do you call it? Zero cost. What do you call it? Zero sum game cost. Whenever you take money for a voucher from the government, that's money that our public schools do not have to further a common education. And it's been happening more and more homeschooling, and the less education you have, the more rife your religious belief will be.
And speaking of believing more, churches aren't in the business of giving reasonable answers to problems. They are in the business of giving lip service and no feasible material products or anything actually worthwhile, because if you get fixed, you're not going to need the church anymore. So they have to keep giving you a little bit of poison and make sure you keep coming back so they can keep getting your money. They're not in the interest of you solving a problem. They just want to supply you with additional mystery. And what better mystery than an ambiguous God you've never met? You have to keep believing more, even if your thing didn't work out. Even if your experiment didn't work out, it's your fault. It's not God's fault. It's you for not believing hard enough. And that's one of the most, hurtful things that I could hear knowingly being given to me by someone who's so ignorant of the fact that they're being used by a very clever pastor, or a pastor who's fallen so deep into the system that he doesn't see it for himself and continues to espouse it to his, congregation. Larry,
if I can
expound at the bottom of the offer.
I'm sorry,
John Richards. John Richards, go ahead, and then Larry, go on and take us out.
I was going to expound a bit on what we've just been talking about, because what we've done in this country is, since we made the religion part of the state, we've made it unnecessary for them to battle to get their doctrines adopted. So we've effectively made them toothless. There's no need for them. Whereas in the States, you've got people who are desperate to get their doctrines adopted by the state. So
now, I know my Tudor history well enough to know that making the Henry VIII's making of the Anglican Church was not a smooth process.
No.
But you guys had a couple hundred years ahead of us in sorting it out compared to pointing fingers at us now.
There was a lot of executions on both sides.
So forgive us if we're doing it in our own little weird way.
And how different would it be if the Roman Catholic Church was still in the official religion of England, rather than what is the church that you currently have? I can't think of it.
The
Church of England.
Anglican, right? They're a much more fundamentalist, much more strict church than Anglicanism is. Their beliefs are much more hardcore, looking down through the ages to the pilgrims and the religious wars that they had in institutions. It could have been a whole different story had Henry VIII not stepped in. And
absolutely,
it would have made the next crusade a lot easier. How about that?
Exactly.
We had witch burnings with the rest of Europe, of course. Yes,
sure.
But the thing about Anglicanism is it's a range. You have high church and low church, and at the low church end is really Protestant. We have the Methodists, and then at the high church end it's nearly Catholic. We say that's the smells and bells version of
I like that. Well, let's get to the break here. This has been the first half of the Digital Freethought Radio Hour on WOZO Radio 103.9 LPFM right here in Knoxville, Tennessee. And we'll be right back after this short break. Welcome back to the second half of the Digital Freethought Radio Hour. I'm Doubter 5, and we're on WOZO Radio 103.9 LPFM right here in Knoxville, Tennessee. Now let's talk just for a second about the Atheist Society of Knoxville. ASK was founded in 2002. We're in our 20th year. ASK has over 1,000 members, and we have weekly in-person meetings here in Knoxville's Old City at Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria. That's Barley's Tap Room and Pizzeria. Look for us on the inside at the high top tables. Usually we're the loudest, happiest group there. Tuesday evenings.
Larry, now, quick question. Is it in the same place that you guys were at when I was there? Is it the same long
the high top
Viking
tables?
Table?
Yeah. They're all like stacked end to end.
Yes.
So that it's a very long table. And when you walk in, you really can't miss it.
When you walk in, you cannot miss it.
No. If you'd like to join our Tuesday evening virtual meeting, say you don't live in Knoxville, but like to join in an atheist conversation or just a bunch of atheists talking about anything under the sun, email us at askanatheist@knoxvilleatheist.org or let's chat se@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook, meetup.com, or at knoxvilleatheist.org, or just Google Knoxville Atheist. It's just that simple. Also, if you don't live in Knoxville, you should still go to Meetup and do a search for an atheist group in your town. Don't find one, start one. That's right. Wombat, where you want to pick up?
Hey, so we were talking about the idea of not believing hard enough and why it's actually a dangerous thing to hear and for you to say to other people, because it doesn't mean that you're giving yourself a test that's falsifiable. It puts the blame on you as the believer when something doesn't work out, and it just puts you in a worse position where people can abuse your best interests. George, you had some additional comments.
Yes, I wanted to give an example of one that's coming in out of left field and not religious in the conventional sense, about this concept of not believing strongly enough. As you know, I moved here from California, here being Tennessee, rural Tennessee. And so in 40 years of living in Northern California, I will say that I was exposed to the spirituality Nazis. And I was in a
nicer word. Why don't choose a harsher word?
Okay, the spiritual fascists. That's a nicer word.
It's fine either way.
Yeah. And so I was in a meeting with a fellow who had muscular sclerosis, and he was a young fellow, but nonetheless his condition was continuously deteriorating, and he was defiant, that he was going to be as independent as he could, despite the fact that the disease was progressing. And I would watch him. He had a minivan, and he would, all by himself, he would hurl his wheelchair into the back of the minivan and then hold himself up by holding onto the roof of the minivan and inching his way around to the driver's door. People accused him of not believing strongly enough in his own spiritual healing, and that the disease was winning because he was guilty of not
blaming the victim.
Blaming the victim. That's good, Larry.
Wow.
Yeah.
More needless guilt.
Yeah, and so here are people who are rebelling against conventional religion, and what the hell are they doing?
One quick comment, because we're in the middle of a pandemic right now, and how many people are in the belief that it's just the flu, it's just something that's going to go away, or the vaccines don't actually work, and that they were made too quick and they're not effective whatsoever. And if I believe that hard enough, even if my friends who believe that with me died, it's the fact that they must have done something wrong, because I, as the one true anti-vaxxer, have the right strategy in mind. And how much are we suffering as a community because of that?
Until you get it.
Until you get it. And then at that point, what do you do then? Just believe harder? Like, we already know we can't do that.
Well, at that point, you realize that what you were believing prior was false, because you have plenty of faith, but you still got it and you're dying, and everybody around you is saying you don't have enough faith. Yes. But how do you get that concept to somebody else?
Yeah. How do you convince somebody so that they can believe the different thing that you did?
One thing that I keep noticing is that the story for what's wrong keeps changing as the science proves this or that or the other thing. A new narrative comes in as to why people shouldn't, let's say, get vaccinated. So
it's
the
always a
latest
different excuse.
Yeah, the latest one that I heard, and this is from a nurse in a hospital that treats COVID patients, was that the vaccine has not been tested enough, and therefore I'm not going to get vaccinated.
Right.
And she lost her job because of this.
Well, I would almost be happy for it. To be honest with you, it's time we like start cracking down on it. But I've heard as crazy things as there's chips in it, to there's other diseases in it, to it's just salt water. It's all placebo. We've been on the front lines and trying to figure out ways to mass produce these vaccines at our company, and it's a rampant. Even people at our jobs will have excuses that pop up, and you're like, "But you're helping make the thing. What are you doing?" It's just like, it's a really crazy situation. John, it sounded like you had a comment.
Yeah, we've had some cases over here where hospital patients, and 80% of the patients in intensive care at the moment are unvaccinated. And we've had cases where, as they've been being fitted with a respirator, a ventilator to help them breathe, they've finally managed to mumble, "I'll have the vaccine now."
Yup. And it's too late. It's too late at this point.
They don't understand preventative medicine.
They never had it explained well enough to them, maybe, perhaps, so that they could be convinced. Or they were never in a culture that allowed them to have a chance at being convinced. And sometimes, how much can we learn properly? How much can we actually objectively learn about this reality if we break out of the cultures that we are in right now that are somewhat toxic to reality, right? George,
well, what I'm talking about is the rotating justifications against the core belief, which is anti-science.
Yeah. The funny thing is, truth doesn't tend to wiggle as much in terms of narrative as really, really delicious lies. So like when we have a problem that's truthful, it's always the same answer every single time. It's boring. It's just like, oh, I know. There's too many people and we're throwing away too much stuff and we're making the world a bad place for us to continue to live here. Or maybe there's too many brown people in this neighborhood and start voting for more Republicans. And it's like, wait, hold on. It's like, wait, I think I'm onto something here. It's like, listen to this guy. It's like, no, listen to that guy. We fall into the same hole every single time. John Richards.
Well, you've touched on something there on the subject of lies are more attractive than truth. You can apply that to a lot of things, because who do you think of, or what field of enterprise do you think of when I say something like stories that are colorful, exciting, and designed to entertain?
News. 24-hour news.
Okay. Go a little bit further.
Can I name specific programs you want, or like BBC?
No, I was thinking of another field that we atheists like to poke at.
Church pastors. Don't put me on the hot spot, Larry. Help me out here.
Well, no, I was thinking of the Bible and the other,
of course,
and the other religious sources, because they're full of these stories that are exciting and colorful and designed to entertain. It's not just, lies about science. And on that front, it's not just science itself, is it? It's hatred of the government that drives people to disbelieve what they're told.
All right, John Richards, I have a question for you. You threw me off with designed to entertain, because have you read the Bible? It is not an entertaining book. It is a really, really rough book to get through. I made the effort to read through it 3 times, maybe twice in my adulthood, and I fell asleep. Just like, this begot this guy, this begot. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah, most of the good stories are in the first book.
Or in the first couple of pages.
Yeah. And
you're done.
And then after that, it's all just Jewish history. It's fantasized Jewish history.
He's taking water out of a well. Oh my God.
Or in the Gospels, of course, they've got some tasty stories. But I think where you've gone wrong is you've read the original ancient English version. You should be reading the kids version. You know,
Oh, okay. What's the kids version difference between the two, if you know what I mean?
Well, it's rewritten in simple language. You need to get a book of Bible stories for children.
Is it like Jesus took out his cell phone and TikToked everybody that he's the Messiah and he's coming back, and people are like, "Oh yeah, I'll retweet that."
They're much more palatable.
Well, leave on that. George, you had some questions about the Church of England, actually, since we're getting closer to it. Do you happen to remember what you were going to ask? If not,
absolutely not. I have no memory of.
So, John Richards, you were saying something about there being a lower church and a higher church.
Yes.
In the way how Church of England is structured. How did that come about?
Well, I'm not a historian, but hundreds of years ago, the Roman Catholic Church was very corrupt. The popes were treated like emperors.
But they were called innocents. What are you talking about? They had innocent in the name.
It's always a good idea to label yourself something that you're not. I mean, think of all the countries that have democrat or democracy in their name.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Actually dictatorships. Anyway, what happened was there was a reaction against this corruption in the church, and it started, I believe, in Germany, where there was Martin Luther, and and this coincided with the invention of printing. So he was able to get his message out better than anybody else at the time, and so that spread. We had there was a lot of to and froing in Europe. Holland, and the UK became very close pals. And so we got our version of Martin Luther was John Wesley, who set up the Methodist Church in the UK. And then we got some really extreme Protestants like the Pilgrim Fathers, and we sent them over to you.
Yes.
Oh, Lord.
These guys are too crazy. Go over there. And they're like, sure, this will work out well. So how did that actually bifurcate into two structures of the church? Are you saying then basically what we're looking at is a natural breakdown of the massive corrupt Catholic Church being what is now today the major influence of the high church, and then all of these breakdown Methodists being more common to lower churches, I guess more, how do I put it? The more culturally informed side? What's the best way of saying this? Larry, you have a saying where the more a church pulls away from its dogma, the more it actually becomes compatible with humanity.
My saying basically was Christians, Muslims, any religious people are good people in inverse proportion to how closely they follow their religion's text.
Right. And it seems like the lower church seems to reflect the, hey, we're going towards this way, more progressive, whereas the high church is more stuck in the bells and smells.
Well, I forget how many different denominations of baptism you have over in the US, but it's
innumerable.
It's thousands. And out of Christianity as a whole, there must be, 30,000 different sects. So what we're looking at here is a desire for people to be right, and therefore they want their God to agree with them.
Right. Listen, I can tell you right now, if you go to a Baptist church here, even in Tennessee, the first pew has 10 people in it. There's 14 versions of baptism or Baptist church in that own pew. It only is one guy who's talking, but he doesn't even have control of everyone that's in that congregation. And I've seen that so many times. So I think it's almost an innumerable number. It's as many people plus more different variations of what God is and what it means to them. And you'll hear this, speaking of it's important to believe, you'll hear that God is necessarily having a personal relationship with every single person. Therefore, what God means to one person is going to be truthfully and objectively a different thing for another person. Therefore, for as many different people and believers as there are in that God, there are that many valid variations of that God. So when you say you don't believe my God, that's totally fine, because I just need to have a personal relationship with my God to be happy, and that's all I need for me. And if that turns out to be wrong, well, then I just wasn't believing hard enough. Oh, my brain explodes! My brain explodes.
No, you weren't.
I
You
could
were
make a
not
great
believing.
Christian still.
You were not believing hard enough in his God, right?
Yeah. I don't have to believe in your God. I have to believe in my God. Well, I'll still go to your church. But still,
So I was talking to my former father-in-law, because I'm my second wife is Ghanaian. We're no longer an item, but we still live in the same house. But I was speaking to my father-in-law one time, lovely fella. We got on really well, had a number of pints together. He's dead now, sadly. But I pointed to an example of a really crazy pastor, a Ghanaian pastor, who I think he was making his flock eat the grass or some really.
Yeah.
Oh,
I saw that.
no.
Yeah. So I was talking about this over a pint with my former father-in-law. And so I asked him, how do you tell false pastors? Because he was down crying the nasty false pastors who are giving proper religion a bad reputation. So I asked him, how you tell a false pastor
Great question.
from a real pastor, you see.
Okay. And what do you say?
He didn't really have a satisfactory answer, but I do. I've got a method.
Please tell me what he said first, and then I want to know. I just want to know in my head, or it's going to bother me all day. What did he say?
Well, I can't really remember his exact words. This is some years ago, but he just waffled a bit about whether they belong to an authentic, bona fide branch.
Well, they were part of a group that believed the right way or hard enough.
Yes, exactly. So would you like to hear my method for telling a false pastor from a real one? Well,
sure.
Presumably, a real pastor has a better line of communication to God than a false one does. Right?
Okay,
so
sure,
all you have to do is get them both to pray for something and see who gets the best result.
But you see, the one who fails just didn't believe hard enough.
Yes.
And their God's still very much real and true. You know, it boils down to me what is falsifiability. In science, we have a standard called falsifiability in terms of determining how rational a conclusion is.
Yeah.
The more falsifiable your conclusion or your statement, the better. Because you're basically setting yourself up to whether you get a yes or a no, a green light or a red light, or an on or off on your test. Whatever it is, you set it up for binary conditions, and you will learn something of value, whether it's up or down, or left or not left, whatever it is. But when you have a non-falsifiable claim, or if you have an unfalsifiable claim, you basically put yourself in a position with, regardless of whatever conclusion or result you end up with, you're only reinforcing the initial bias or the initial impression you had at the start.
Yeah, especially if you've already got an excuse planned for when it doesn't go your way.
Yes.
If it reinforces your view, hey, you're right. If it doesn't, well, God has a mysterious plan.
Right.
Type of answer.
And if you're making vaccines, right, for COVID, you have two bottles, A and B, and you want to see which one works better. And you think it's going to be A. So you do A 100 times, you do B 100 times, and B works every single time, even though you didn't believe it was going to work. A didn't work a single time. But you know what? Maybe you just didn't believe hard enough. Let's do the test over again. You're wasting so much time. People's precious lives are dependent on you being able to do your work and executing it properly. And thankfully, science doesn't operate in that kind of scope. There's a lot of barriers in terms of how to design an experiment to stop that kind of bias from ruining the efficiency of a test or a testing sequence. Yeah. However, no one applies that to their faith or what their belief systems are. And what we find is that the care that people put into things like, is my car working? Are my brake lights on or off? Is there gas in my car? We don't even apply that same basal level of fact checking to our beliefs on whether or not a God exists or whether or not we're wasting our money by tithing, things like that. I wish we did. What's up, George?
Well, the other guy's belief is the cult, but mine is not. Yes. I have a pipeline directly to the truth by way of God myself, but the other guy, he's a cult.
Yeah.
This is like Larry's wonderful statement, everybody's going to somebody else's hell.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's also
every preacher is a false preacher to some other religion.
It's really fun to ask a religious person what they mean by cult and ask them to define it and see what the response they get is. And then just and try not to smile. Try to be like really serious. If you listen to it, it's just like, well,
oh boy,
they're really into like talking and taking your money, and they have these weird things with talking animals and like drinking juice and like, and they say it's the body of their something. It's like, are we talking about Christianity? It's like, no, of course not. Maybe we are. Let me try another thing. Guys, final words on the idea of not believing hard enough, the true dangers of it. What do you think, John Richards?
Yeah, sure. I don't think we've solved the problem of how to believe harder anyway. Is it a pedal to the metal thing? Do you have to spend more time praying or what? I mean, the Muslims spend five prayers a day, every day, don't they? They're really the fundamentalist ones. So.
They claim to. I have family that are Muslim that just say, I do it, but if I skip a couple, it's all good. It's all good because it's all good.
It strikes me that going by that, then the Islamic religion is much harder in terms of its belief than any other religion.
Than any other religion? Well, I mean, clearly there are religions that are not sustainable for human life that just have not fostered enough people to promote it, right?
Well, maybe they're not missionarizing hard enough.
Yeah, right.
George.
I have the answer. Take Pastor George Brown, the 2.5's amazing course on how to believe strongly enough. Only $49.95. Send it
there
to
you
George
go.
Brown, the
go.
2.5.
I love it. Yeah, Larry, what's up?
I was just going to say the way to believe harder is at least what the preacher would have you do is be skeptical less, question less, have more faith in what he says is true. In other words, follow what he says. And that would be believing harder, whether you internalize it or not.
And give him more money.
That is the perfect nail on the head. It's basically put yourself in a more vulnerable position. And that will show that you believe more. I was going to take that same route, but I think you have the most extreme, truthful example. I would say people who try to believe more follow more extreme actions and justify it with their faith. And that can go as far as causing harm to other people or harm to themselves as a demonstration of what they truly believe. And also bad tattoos. Of course, there's going to be bad tattoos, right?
And if you give more money to the church, then you've got more chance of becoming an angel.
Yeah.
$49.95, guys.
Or getting a nice pair of special underwear, or getting to the higher levels where you get to meet some celebrities. George Brown, ideas on believing harder. How would you do it with this program that you're selling me? How does this $49.99 program work? Is it 10 steps?
No, there's no steps.
A credit card?
You just send money. This is all.
Do we even get a pamphlet? Do we get access to a website?
No, you just send. You get your canceled check back if you get canceled checks.
This is a prosperity religion, isn't it?
Oh,
absolutely. They all are. Get out of jail free.
Oh well.
You're in heaven forever. I was going to curse, but I can't.
Good for you, George.
Don't do that.
Good for you. Good for you. Larry, I guess I'll throw this one out to you before we wrap up. But the true harms of trying to believe harder.
The true harm? Is denying reality. And the harder you try, the more reality you're denying. It's like Jesus take the wheel. It says, give up and give in, give it over to Jesus. Well, but basically what you're doing is just punting your problems down the road. They're not going to get any better. You're basically letting fate take its hand. Who knows where that's going to end up? And usually, if you don't have any say in what your future is going to be like, it's not going to be what you want it to be. You're not going to be where you want to be in the future. Right. It's not recommended. I'll put it that way.
I'm going to tell you what my learning lessons are from this conversation. One, I learned a lot from John Richards by saying you can't increase the rate of how you're believing something. It's a binary state. And then Larry, for you to say it's not even a thoughtful action on my part. It's a consequence of whether or not I'm convinced it's true. And I can spend a lot of my time trying to believe harder in the same way that I could try to fly faster. Like I can't fly. Like it's not a choice that I'm making to not fly. It's an inability on my part. And to do it or to be asked to do it any faster or fault myself for not doing it as fast enough to make something true is so much blame on my part. And what leads to what George was talking about, it just puts a lot of needless guilt on me and adds more of it to the world. We shouldn't have to
absolutely
make that the foundation for religious belief. We should be able to recognize it for what it is and move on to a better system of thought. George Brown, before we close up.
We've got a little bit of time left.
Sweet.
Okay. Does Jesus drive your robocar?
I hope not. We were talking about even a putt. So I do putt with a lot of Christians, by the way. I think they're steadily beginning to realize that I am not a Christian myself, because there'll be times where someone will putt with a disc and they'll be like, Jesus, take the wheel. And I'll be like, Jesus is a jerk. When they miss the putt, and they'll be like, they'll look at me, but they'll laugh at the same time too. And I'm like, good. Let everybody know. Let everyone know. But yeah, it's been fun. Larry, what's up?
Yeah. Like I was saying about letting Jesus take the wheel, you're simply letting inertia carry you rudderless into the future. Then when you arrive at the next interim destination, good or bad, and you're making the best of it, you'll proclaim, see, God knew what I needed to do. Lose your job? Well, God knew I needed to lose that job. It's just all good. Never mind that the story failed in 2 years after you started your business. God knew what was going to happen. It's just, he is in a no-lose situation, even though your life may be getting worse and worse.
Absolutely true. And it's for you. When you see a neighbor crash and burn almost in the same way you are, you say to that person, well, that person's just not believing hard enough, even though you're in the exact same situation. It's crazy how our brains make things, stories for ourselves. John, I think I saw your hand up.
Yeah. Well, Jesus Take the Wheel was quite a large country music hit, I think, in your part of the world.
It's not in England?
No.
Is it Jesus Take the Croissant? Or the biscuit?
No
the
market.
biscuit.
All right.
Little market for it here.
Well, you anticipate in the next 7 years. It's coming.
I wanted to point out that believing is not a way of discovering. It's not a reliable method of discovering anything. So, and these people who stand in a devastated city where an earthquake has just struck and say, thank God I'm alive, ignoring all the millions that were killed.
Right. They must have been sinners. They didn't have enough faith. Again, blaming the victim.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, we do it, but we need to stop doing it. And is basically what I'm saying. And what's the best way to help someone realize that they're doing it? It's to help to enlighten them that you can change your culture that you're in. You can get access to different kinds of information, because I think through that exposure alone, you get to start making questions on which set do I appreciate more? And you won't know that until people know where you're coming from. And so if you're talking to a person who only thinks that everyone around him is Christian, let them know you're an atheist. And then if they want to have a conversation with that, have a conversation about that. But let them know that not everyone around them is like them. And then I'll have to make them start thinking about, well, where's this guy coming from? What's this guy's attitude? Where's his culture coming from? Where do you get your values from? Hey, can we talk about this for a little bit? Because I'm really now, I want to know what's going to happen to my soul. You might have some really interesting things happen.
We need to start winding down at this point anyway.
All right.
Final words?
Those were my final words. John Richards, what do you got? Anything you'd like to plug?
Plugging? Yeah, sure. My YouTube channel, Freethought Productions, is where I do my fun work. And I had a break. I had Christmas and New Year off because of a couple of things, because it was family festive occasion and because I was still suffering from COVID. But I'm back.
Nice.
He's back and he's bad.
I had a couple of excellent programs last night, excellent shows. I did the Global Atheist News, which I always enjoy doing. And I also had a free thought hour chat with Dr. Lucy Rogers, a really fun person to talk to.
For our American listeners, John Richards didn't say he's Johann Sebastian Bach. He's saying he's back. back, as in he's returned. Just helping you guys out. George Brown, so glad that you're at least out of the hospital.
Feeling better.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I'm looking
Well,
forward to
I'm on the road. I'm on the road, and it's always exciting to look forward to something. I don't have all the answers,
Nice.
and this is one of the reasons why I think I've enjoyed being so involved with classical music all my life, is that I will never know all of it. I will never have all the answers. I will always have something to look forward to learning.
Fantastic.
And this makes life worthwhile to me.
Sure, it does. It really does.
Here. Lifelong learning. Here.
Well, my resources are found at digitalfreethought.com. Be sure to click on the blog button for our radio show archives, atheist songs, and many articles on the subject. I have a book on Amazon called Atheism, What's It All About?
What? You never told us
check that out. I did. And my YouTube channel is found by searching for Larry Rhodes. By the way, if you're a member of clergy, a preacher, imam, pastor, or priest, but no longer believe in the claims of your religion, or any religion for that matter, there is help for you at the clergyproject.org. The link is clergyproject.org. Thank you for joining us for the Digital Freethought Radio Hour. Remember, you can find this show on Apple iTunes, Pocket Cast, Amazon, and Pocket Cast everywhere, podcasts, or just search for Digital Freethought Radio Hour. If you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to like and subscribe. Remember, everybody is going to somebody else's hell. The time to worry about it is when they prove that heavens and hells and souls are real. Until then, don't sweat it. Enjoy your life, and we'll see you next week. Say bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.